What if a voice capable of stopping time simply ceased to exist in the eyes of the public? In 2012, Jessica Sanchez wasn't just a singer. She was a cultural phenomenon, a 16-year-old vocal powerhouse who seemed destined to occupy the throne left vacant by the greats. From the moment she stepped onto the American Idol stage, the narrative was set. She was the chosen one. But as the bright lights of the finale dimmed, something shifted. Instead of the meteoric rise everyone predicted, Jessica seemed to slip through the cracks of a crumbling industry. For over a decade, the silence was deafening, leaving fans to wonder if the industry had chewed up and spit out its brightest star. But the truth behind her disappearance is far more complex than a simple flop. We've spent weeks digging into the archives to understand how a girl who received a standing ovation from every judge in Hollywood could suddenly find herself without a platform. The missing years were marked by a strange kind of digital exile, where her name appeared only in "Where Are They Now" lists and nostalgia threads. But as our investigation reveals, the quiet years were actually a calculated build-up to a comeback that would shock the world. The fall from grace didn't happen overnight, but the signs of trouble were hidden in plain sight. After her season ended, Jessica was signed to a major label deal that promised global superstardom. She was paired with Ne-Yo, given a guest spot on Glee, and marketed as the next It Girl. However, behind closed doors, the creative conflicts were mounting. Sources close to her team at the time suggest that the label was trying to mold her into a generic pop star, stripping away the soul that made her a household name. When her debut album failed to reach the heights of her peers, the support vanished. Suddenly, the phone stopped ringing, and the sure thing found herself without a contract and without a platform. It was a cold reminder that in the music business, you're only as good as your last week's sales. This wasn't just a financial blow. It was an identity crisis. Imagine being told you are the greatest singer of your generation at 16, only to be told you're unmarketable at 18. She was stuck in a legal and professional limbo, unable to release new music under her own terms while the industry moved on to the next viral sensation. The exposed truth of the music business is that talent is often secondary to the bottom line, and Jessica was a casualty of that cold reality. And just when it looked like her American career was over, Jessica made a move that no one saw coming. While the American mainstream moved on, Jessica was quietly building an empire across the Pacific. She became a ghost in the States, but a goddess in the Philippines. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a survival strategy. She was headlining arenas and performing for heads of state, all while being completely ignored by the media back home. This international exile allowed her to keep her voice sharp and her fan base loyal, but it came with a heavy emotional price. She was a superstar in one world and a has-been in another. Rumors began to circulate that she was content with her life as an overseas legend, but those close to her knew the fire to prove herself on the world's biggest stage had never truly been extinguished. She was effectively living a double life. In Manila, she couldn't walk down the street without security. In Los Angeles, she could sit in a coffee shop for hours without being recognized. This disconnect fueled a deep-seated desire to reclaim the narrative. She wasn't just singing for a paycheck. She was training. She spent years perfecting her craft in a way that the instant fame of reality TV never allowed. The mystery of why she didn't return sooner was finally revealed. She was waiting for the right moment to strike back at a system that had discarded her too soon. However, the opportunity to reclaim her crown would require a gamble that put her entire future at risk. In a move that caught the entire industry off guard in early 2025, a familiar silhouette appeared on the stage of America's Got Talent for its landmark 20th season. This wasn't a guest performance. Jessica Sanchez was back as a contestant. The news sent shockwaves through social media, with many asking why a former runner-up would risk her legacy. But there was a deeper layer to this story. Jessica wasn't just there to sing. She was there to settle a score with the show that had rejected her when she was only 11 years old. The stakes were impossibly high. If she lost again, she would be permanently labeled a professional contestant rather than a star. But the woman who walked onto that stage was vastly different from the girl the world remembered. She possessed a grit and a revealed confidence that only a decade of struggle can produce. The judges were speechless, and the audience was instantly captivated by the narrative of a fallen star rising from the ashes. It was a masterclass in rebranding. She didn't rely on her old hits. She brought a new, raw energy that made it clear she wasn't just looking for a win, she was looking for redemption. But as the competition heated up, a physical transformation began to spark a massive medical controversy. As the live shows approached, it became impossible to ignore. Jessica was heavily pregnant. The news polarized the audience. Some saw it as an inspiring display of strength, while others called it a reckless medical risk. Reports surfaced that the production team was in a state of constant alert, with specialized medical staff positioned just off-camera during every rehearsal. The physical toll of carrying a child while attempting to hit the highest notes in music is almost unimaginable. Breathing, the very foundation of singing, becomes a monumental task as the diaphragm is compressed. Yet, Jessica refused to dial back the difficulty of her arrangements. She was performing on a knife's edge, balancing the safety of her unborn child with the pursuit of a dream that had eluded her for 20 years. Rumors surfaced that she was advised to withdraw for her own health, but she pushed forward, delivering performances that were arguably better than anything she had done as a teenager. This wasn't just entertainment. It was a testament to the human spirit. Every high note felt like a victory over the critics who said she shouldn't be there, and every standing ovation was a slap in the face to the industry that had once counted her out. And as the final votes were tallied, the world witnessed a moment of redemption that defied every industry standard. In September 2025, the impossible became reality. 19 years after her initial rejection and 13 years after her first loss, Jessica Sanchez was officially crowned the champion. She had done the unthinkable. She bypassed the one-hit wonder curse and re-entered the spotlight as a matured, sovereign artist. The victory wasn't just about a trophy. It was a total vindication. She became the first artist in history to lose a major competition as a teen only to return and win a bigger one as a mother. The data showed that her performances were the most-watched clips of the decade, proving that the world was finally ready for the real Jessica. The industry was shaken by the result. Labels that hadn't spoken to her in a decade were suddenly engaged in a bidding war for her new material. But the victory was bittersweet. While the world celebrated her triumph, Jessica was preparing for the most difficult role of her life. She was a champion on Tuesday and a mother on Wednesday, transitioning from the roar of a stadium to the quiet, exhausting reality of a nursery. The victory proved that talent is timeless, but it also highlighted the extreme pressure placed on women to have it all simultaneously. But as the confetti fell, a new and much more personal battle was beginning behind the scenes. Now, in the spring of 2026, the narrative has shifted from professional triumph to personal survival. Just weeks after her historic win, Jessica welcomed her daughter, Ileana, into a world of intense scrutiny. Recently, she has used her platform to speak openly about her postpartum struggle and the mental exhaustion of maintaining a public image while healing. She admitted in a recent broadcast that there were days she couldn't even look at her trophy because of the heavy cloud hanging over her. This raw honesty has turned her into an advocate for maternal health, proving that the most shocking part of her story isn't her voice, but her resilience. Rumors of her offing her career to be a full-time mom were quickly debunked when she announced a world tour for late 2026, but the question remains, at what cost? She is navigating the treacherous waters of 2026 fame, where every move is analyzed by millions. Her journey from a rejected child to a champion mother is a story for the ages, but it serves as a stark reminder that the spotlight often demands more than it gives. As she prepares for her ASEAN Summit performance, the world is watching to see if she can sustain the momentum. One thing is certain. The story of Jessica Sanchez is no longer a tragedy of what could have been, but a masterpiece of what is.